Transformers films have had quite a rough go at it, but not as rough of a time as I've had watching them. Though the first live-action Transformers film felt fresh at the time, the following films have increasingly become more like a caricature of themselves. The Bayhem swallowed itself whole, and I'm pretty sure I slept through the second film, which was directed less like a film and more like a car commercial. It wasn't until Transformers The Last Night, the 5th installment in the series, when the audiences collectively decided to reject these glorified Honda commercials which they called movies, which thankfully led to director Michael Bay ending his tenure in the franchise, only for director Travis Knight to step in and direct Bumblebee, the best film in the franchise yet. By no means was Bumblebee a perfect film. I still think it was a little too light on the plot area of things, but it had heart, charming performances from Haley Steinfeld and John Cena, and it, felt like a genuine film, which is more than I can say about the previous films in the series. In a perfect world, we would have gotten a Bumblebee 2. Unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world, with Bumblebee qualifying as only a moderate success, grossing $468 million against a roughly $135 million budget, which results in us getting Transformers Rise of the Beast, which I haven't watched, but based on everything I heard, it was a return to home for the franchise, plunging it back into the mediocrity we were so familiar with. Which brings us now to Transformers 1, a feature-length animated film directed by Josh Cooley, director of Toy Story 4. And while Toy Story 4 was far from the best in the series, I thought he did as good a job as you could do directing an absolutely unnecessary 4th installment. So when I heard the praise Transformers 1 was receiving, with many calling it the best Transformers movie, I put aside my first instincts of the trailer being absolutely terrible and decided to watch it for myself. And no, my first instincts were right. This movie is not good. When I first watched the trailer, I was stuck for words at how uninspired the animation style was. In a world where the Spider-Verse films are creating a mishmash of different animation styles to create something unlike we've ever seen before, and Disney has established a consistent but effective animation style with films such as Inside Out, Transformers 1 is the first mainstream animated movie that you'll feel like you could have made on your computer. The animation is just incredibly flat. I remember watching Inside Out 2 and remarking on how the animation was used to convey the feelings and personalities of the characters through body language and mannerisms. This movie is quite the opposite. The characters just stand there lacking in articulation and say their lines. There isn't much in the way of using animation as a medium to convey a character's personality and inner thoughts, instead letting the voice acting do all the work. Thankfully, the filmmakers went out and got an incredibly talented group of voice actors, ones who are so well cast and understand their characters so intimately as to be able to convey their unique personality. I'm just kidding. They went out and got the biggest Hollywood names available, instead of hiring genuinely experienced voice actors, or at least voice actors who fit their roles. Like, I love Keegan-Michael Key, but it feels pretty goofy to hear his voice coming out of a Transformer. Scarlett Johansson was great in Spike Jonze's Her, so it's not like she can't voice act. I just don't think she cared much about how she sounded in this film, because she's really reading off the phone book. Chris Hemsworth does a pretty good job as Optimus Prime, but I don't know if his American accent is entirely convincing. Maybe to the average audience member it will be, but as an Aussie myself, I can always hear the Australian come through. By far the best voice actor in the cast is Brian Tyree Henry as Megatron, who delivers a genuinely nuanced performance, doing justice to the most compelling character in the movie. As much as I would like to blame the actors entirely for their uninspired performances, I don't think it would be entirely fair to do so. There's plenty of blame to go around, and some of it has to fall on the screenwriting, which is incredibly cliche. There's a moment where a character is giving a motivational speech, but it doesn't even sound like an actual speech. It sounds like a series of detached, unrelated, and separate lines, which they got off a 19 motivational quotes website. I know they tried to dumb it down to make it more accessible and kid-friendly, but in all honesty, I don't think the kids will be feeling this one much. In the past year, I went to the cinemas to watch both Inside Out 2 and John Krasinski's If, and in both of those movies, I felt far more energy from the younger crowd, who seemed pretty passive during my screening of Transformers 1. Maybe it has something to do with the mature themes this movie deals with, which are frankly its greatest strength. Despite being an alienating film for adults, the film deals with worker empowerment, exploitation, and touches on the important notion that many people don't find personal fulfillment in their job. Instead, they're barely managing to get by while the higher-ups sprint off with all the profits. These are things we don't typically see in animated films, but Transformers 1 doesn't do a compelling job exploring them. The writing, animation style, and voice acting surrounding them is so bad that the most I can give it is an A for effort. While I understand the movie's decision to put the focus of a Transformers movie on the actual Transformers, I personally think they went too far in the opposite direction when compared to the previous films. Whereas those films can be accused of focusing too much on the humans, this movie doesn't have a single human character, and I think that was a mistake. The question of how Transformers can coexist with humans has always been one of the more compelling aspects of the Transformers mythology. By removing this component, you lose the essential tension created by the Transformers existing in the real world. Not only that, you lose the contrast created by putting the human and Transformer characters side by side. Here, every single character is some sort of robot, or more specifically a Transformer, which ultimately makes the presence of the Transformers themselves feel even less awe-inspiring. And while the action sequences in this film are decent, I think they'll be even better if there was the presence of humans to inject real life stakes into the battle. Because when I see two invincible robots beating the crap out of each other, I don't feel anything. Perhaps human characters are something they planned on introducing in the sequel, which this movie certainly teases. But considering the dismal financial performance of this movie, I think we'll look back at the sequel tease as being very similar to the end credits scene in Green Lantern. That is, if we're even looking back at this movie at all a year from now. Oftentimes, I go into a movie with a preconceived notion, but I try to leave that notion at the front door and allow a movie to prove me wrong. Many times I'm proven wrong, but other times that preconceived notion proves to be right, and this is one of those cases. I expected not to like Transformers 1, and I was right. I expected the animation style to be distracting in how uninspired it is, and I was right. I expected the voice acting to be ill-fitted, and yeah, it was. But I guess it wasn't as gouge my eyes out level terrible as I might have thought it would be, so on that count, I was wrong. But I'm still giving this one a 4 out of 10. Thanks for watching this video. If you've had the chance to watch Transformers 1 in cinemas, let us know what you thought about it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel for weekly movie and TV reviews. I'm Cinemike, and I'll see you next time.